Bienvenidos y gracias a todos por estar en el
for
evento
being
de
here
hoy. Mi
today.
nombre
My
es
name is
Amira
Amir
Hidalgo
Hidalgo,
y voy a
and I'll
estar
be
presentando y
presenting and
moderando
moderating
este
this
webinar.
live session today. Before introducing you to Carlos Pallotti, our speaker today, I'd like to present to you our new e-learning platform, Talentum 360. Let's watch a launch video first. Center developed by Clear Words Translations, focused on the global translation and localization market, technology, AI, advanced translation techniques, business, games, localizations, and project management are just a few examples of the topics that are covered in the courses. The goal of this training center is to encourage training, innovative training in the job workstations, continuous education and professional development for company talents and for the public in general. The main goal is to be closer to employees and professionals, contributing and sharing knowledge and new tools. We acknowledge that the translation and localization industry is changing, and it brings about new challenges, and Talentum wants to be a part of that movement. This new business unit is for everybody, to hit our professional development and to offer the translation and localization community a single place for professional development. We celebrate this launch with all of you today, and a great speaker will share his ideas about the importance of continuous education and how technology may help us in the process. Now, without further ado, we introduce to Carlos Pallotti. He's a specialist in technological policies, and he has more than 30 years in IT technologies and knowledge sciences. He developed businesses as an entrepreneur, and he promoted and implemented policies from the public sector in several countries in Latin America. He's an entrepreneur, founder, and member of several chambers. He's been responsible for public policies applied to the technology industries in the national administration in Argentina. As a deputy director in the national administration and provinces, he has worked in the knowledge industry, and he has been acknowledged in 24 awards. Among those, he's been recognized as the individual of 2017 in Latin America in technological development and attracting investors by the New York Americas US. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here, and I hope my talk today is useful for everybody. Thank you so much. First, I'd like you to join us in our YouTube channel. In the description, you have the language of your choice, whether it's English or Spanish. There is a link with the description of the video. And now, Carlos, the floor is all yours. Thank you. All right, thank you. And I hope that we have a nice webinar. I ask you to save the questions. And you can place them in the YouTube chat at the end of the screen. And let me tell you a little bit about what I'm going to be discussing. We have to talk about the new skills, the new competences required in this knowledge economy, in this new situation. There are few authors that do not believe today, most of them do believe, that we are in the view of a huge digital transformation. Digital society is already here. That was a huge change the society made a few years ago, but now we are in a huge transformation in the labor market, basically mostly linked to all the activities that have to do with the digital industry. Some authors that I share their vision with, they assimilate this, they make a comparison with the revolution in the 19th century. In that moment, society was involved in a huge change in the way assets and goods were produced. We had the locomotion, the railways as a new means of transportation, the ships, and it gave more predictability to deliver goods. Electricity came up, and there were several innovations. The industry itself, the manufacturing industry, appeared as well. And all of that brought about a huge labor transformation. To get out of an agricultural context, sometimes slavery was even involved, and people worked a lot on manual jobs and not that much on intellectual matters. And for having an employee going from manual labor to something more elaborate and more intellectual, they had to complete certain procedures, and they had to understand the numbers. That's when the public schools are born. Massive schools are born. Up to then, workers did not have to have those skills, because in fact it was necessary for them to just know how to plow the land, how to manage cattle racing and stuff like that. The transformation of the industry at the time was so huge that it led to several social changes. For example, the abolition of slavery, and also the transformation, the social transformation that came about in building new cities, hand in hand with the appearance of companies where they conglomerated new people to work in those companies. So now we are in a similar phase, but in the digital world, and everything that we had as a process is being questioned. Let me share some information, and then I'll expand on my ideas. I'm going to share a presentation that I think it will illuminate the situation. The first biggest change that we see is that knowledge has no borders anymore. Talent does. I'm going to explain that concept a little bit more. In the past, and not many years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, no more than that, people with the greatest talents, that had the greatest capacity, they moved to places where they had the knowledge centers, the most important knowledge centers, to work there. So the Silicon Valley was born, and the possibility to have development centers of huge technologies and new products were located in several places in the planet, most particularly in the main countries, in the most important countries, and the best talents were attracted to those geographies so that they could participate and be a part of that generation of knowledge. As a result of internet and the good communication means, and as a result of the decentralization, we started seeing that knowledge is not produced in individual places, but it's collectively produced and in several geographies. So the person may be working with a comprehensive team. Some of the people may be in Poland, some of them could be in India, in San Francisco, and another party could be in Sao Paulo or Rosario or Cordoba here in Argentina. That made the knowledge to have no borders. In fact, they could produce knowledge anywhere, and knowledge starts being non-national anymore. The nationalism concept is lost, and I don't want to go deeper into that concept. I just want to mention that sometimes states don't know how to manage that from the tax standpoint. Where are companies going to pay taxes? People, where are they going to pay taxes? But people are located, based in a very physical place, in a region, in a country, and that brings about a change that is enormous. Talent, measured as the capacity of a human being to do something specific, is something that remains somewhere, stays somewhere, and that changes the rules, because talent does not rely anymore on manual labor. It does not rely on me being able to build a table because I'm a good carpenter, or me being able to manufacture a car. If I have a talent, I have talent for cognitive skills. So let me show you a few pieces of information that I think are interesting. This situation sometimes confuses the political leaders. And let me tell you, let me show you the Prime Minister of England Boris Johnson when he approached and addressed the United Nations last year.
You may keep your secrets from your friends, from your parents, your children, your doctor, even your personal trainer. But it takes real effort to conceal your thoughts from Google. And if that is true today, in future, there may be nowhere to hide. Smart cities will pullulate with sensors, all joined together by the Internet of Things. Bollards communing invisibly with lampposts, so there is always a parking space for your electric car, so that no bin goes unemptied, no street unswept, and the urban environment is as antiseptic as a Zurich pharmacy. But this technology could also be used to keep every citizen under round-the-clock surveillance. A future Alexa will pretend to take orders, but this Alexa will be watching you, clucking her tongue and stamping her foot. In future, voice connectivity will be in every room and almost every object. Your mattress will monitor your nightmares. Your fridge will beep for more cheese. Your front door will sweep wide the moment you approach like some silent butler. Your smart meter will go hustling of its own accord for the cheapest electricity, and every one of them minutely transcribing your every habit in tiny electronic shorthand, stored not in their chips or in their innards, nowhere you can find it, but in some great cloud of data that lowers ever more oppressively over the human race. A giant dark thundercloud waiting to burst, and we have no control over how or when the precipitation will take place. And every day that we tap on our phones or work on our iPads, as I see some of you are doing now, we not only leave our indelible spoor in the ether, but we are ourselves becoming a resource, click by click, tap by tap, and we don't know who decides how to use that data. And can these algorithms be trusted with our lives and hopes? Should the machines, and only the machines, decide whether or not we are eligible for a mortgage or insurance, or what surgery or medicines we should receive? Are we doomed to a cold and heartless future in which computer says yes or computer says no, with the grim finality of an emperor in the arena? In the digital.
Bueno, claramente lo que está diciendo
Boris
Johnson
Johnson
en
is
esta
expressing here is his concern about the future of humankind, domained by machines that have more access to our information, more access to our quality of life, and to recommend and suggest the things that we have to consume, the things that we need to do or not to do. Alexa, for example, that is omnipresent, not only to do what we want, but to monitor what we are actually doing. The question that he puts on the table deep inside is the same question that at the beginning of the 19th century a mayor had. A mayor in a small town, this is what I'm going to tell you is actually real, in the center of the United States. One day a series of workers came to build a train. They were building the railways, and then they built the station. This person and all the people in the town were very happy that the train was going to arrive, because it gave them the possibility to visit family members that were far away and to go in a wagon or on horse. It was very hard. So as a consequence of the train, merchandise came on that train, and then they started getting pullovers and pots and pans. Many of those were produced and manufactured in the towns. So the manufacturers and the craftsmen that lived in town, they said, okay, charge them some tariffs, because everything that is coming, all the goods that are coming are 4-10 times cheaper than what I manufacture. So please charge some to them, because otherwise I would die. I have nothing to produce, nothing to sell. Of course, the mayor in a very logical way, what he did was to levy some taxes on that as sort of customs to compensate what the local manufacturer was losing. As you understand the process, a few months later, the train downloaded the merchandise a few kilometers before, and that merchandise entered through the black market. And one day, the mayor, with all the town, decided that the train was not going to stop anymore. Therefore, the town disappeared, and this town does no longer exist. Since the train didn't stop there, then it made no sense, since they had nothing to sell, transport, or buy, that town disappeared. So what Johnson is more or less saying is kind of the same. He's saying we are in face of this situation. This is a serious situation. It's going to affect humankind. We are going to lose humanity. And the truth is that those of us who are in a transformation, it's a huge transformation, the one that we are undergoing. This that I'm showing appeared in the Financial Times a few weeks ago about the obsolete jobs or workstations. What I said before, knowledge has no borders, talent does. So why can't I produce from the farms, from Campiña, Rio Cuarto, or any place that you think about, if it's transforming, building something, manufacturing something, if I live very comfortable here, and I'm going to give you a very specific example. Many of you know Mercado Libre, the trading platform. Mercado Libre has a company that does the big data of Mercado Libre. In a way, every day they collect all the information of all the transactions that were done that day. They analyze it through artificial intelligence and data mining, and from then on, they recommend salespeople the best moment to sell a specific product, what kind of price, what products sell more, what the price should be, in order to improve the offer of those offering the products. That big data that Mercado Libre offers, total, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico, is done from a very small town in the north of Argentina called Yala, in Jujuy. And it's the most northern province near the border with Bolivia. And Yala is a very small town, 30 kilometers from the capital city of the state of Jujuy. In that city, there is a young couple, 2 engineers, who started doing that, and they do all the intelligence for Mercado Libre, for those who offer products on Mercado Libre, whether it's what their investment in each one of the countries. And it's very interesting because they do it with a team that is in Yala, another team in Buenos Aires, another one in Sao Paulo, and the one that manages all of that is in a location called Carpinteria in San Luis, in the center of Argentina. It's a very small town again, has a lot of tourism, and someone one day decided to have a better quality of life, and this person is there. They have good quality, internet quality, and this person manages what is being doing in Yala, Buenos Aires, San Pablo, and there. So the knowledge world stops having borders, and the borders no longer exist, they disappear. And look at the way this changes. This is a very interesting graph that we should analyze. What has happened with employment in the US over the last 30 years? And what's happened in the US is also reflected all over the world, in our countries as well. In the US, of course, it happened first because they are usually at the avant-garde. This is the number of employees measured in millions of people in each one of these 4 categories. The first category are the non-routinary manual labor, carpenters, plumbers, painters, that has grown with the number of people who work in the US in those activities. The blue line are the workers, the routinary workers that do manual labor, the manufacturers. That is flat. That has not changed. 25 million, maybe 26, 27 million now. It has not substantially changed, even though the population in America has increased. The light blue line are the routinary employees that use knowledge, the physicians, nurses, doctors, teachers, who have to do intellectual activities, but they do it as a routine. And look at the winners of employment, the ones that work with knowledge, people who are linked to giving translation services like many of you provide, to engineering services, architecturing services, services related to software development, to many other activities that where more and more they are required. Movies, for instance, the making of movies. Today, after 30 years, the number of employees has changed, and it's almost doubled the amount of people working in the other jobs. And that brings about the educational system to collapse, because they were prepared to form and train manual workers and routinary workers, and now that is collapsing, because what education is teaching is no longer what the market and the world needs, and it's not what people need to offer. And that really frustrates the educational system, and there is a very critical situation. Universities, schools, what are they teaching? Are they teaching for now? No, they're teaching for an old world. And there are some countries that are introducing some innovations and trying to develop ways of moving forward and trying to anticipate what this tendency tends to bring about. But the world is more and more putting the eyes on an educational system that is not prepared to train people in the format that we had. And at some point, schools were the result of transformation from a slavery world to an industrial world, and school was necessary. Massive schools were necessary for everybody to have basic knowledge, to be an employee in the new productive activities. The same way many people believe that in fact what's coming is a new educational model that is going to train people for this new digital world, this new world that we still don't know the name we're going to give it. It's what we do know is that what we need now is no longer the same thing we needed before. And if we take a look at the last 20 years, there was such an incredible transformation that we have new companies, and the greatest employers in our countries are no longer the big manufacturing companies. They are not even the large department stores. They are companies that provide services, IT services, accounting services, that generate volumes of dozens of employees that need to be trained and need new skills. And added to that, the traditional model was that education was useful for a certain period of life. It started at 5 years of age and it ended at 25, 26, 22, depending on the time you completed your cycle, your educational cycle, 2 or 3 periods according to each country, elementary school, high school, and university. Whatever the case was, that period was about 20 years, 18, 20 years. And after that, the person was able to go out with the training needed. And then after that, they could do some postgraduate degree or a master's program. And that was the end of the educational career. Now, people at 52, 60, 42, 70, they have no reason to stop their training. They can continue learning. The educational cycle are not necessarily only on the first stages of life. There could be a second stage, a third stage. So new things are happening. You are in the translation industry, in the translation world. Age is not an issue for that industry. People could be employed as a translator anywhere in the world at any age to do translations. And I'm sure after the years you would get better and better because you understand more idioms, more twists of the language. So there are no reasons for this to happen at several genders, several ages, several populations. There is no reason for a small town to being very efficient, such as Jala in the province of Jujuy, and to do something very specific that they have the knowledge of. Let me show you now a few things. this is not what's growing. It's growing so exponentially that nowadays all of this production grows a lot more than the assets production. It exports much more than the assets, and when we see here the services, non-traditional services, the knowledge-based services, at the end of 2017 generated $2.3 trillion, and they grew in 7 years by 26%. The pandemic, all it did was to speed up that process. This process is not the result of the pandemic. The pandemic only put in black and white those that were transforming slower, and this process started much earlier, and the growth rate was huge. You will find in any newspaper, on any job portal of any of the countries around the world, that there is a high demand for specific professional profiles, technical profiles, and not a demand on any other profiles. There is very low demand for manual labor profiles, and a huge demand for knowledge-based or intellectual-based jobs. So, as I said, 2.3 trillion, and this accounts for much more than any other activity put all together. Food, textiles, oil and gas. It generates a much larger economy than any other industries or sectors. And during the Industrial Revolution, everything had to do with a ship and a train. Of course, that is still the case, because goods are transported by boat or by train. This is transported by cable, and that cable works faster and better, and it goes to the smallest town that all they need is to have that cable, that wire, to be connected. So this is faster and faster, and that speed is incremental. I see every day, to be more precise, no more than 2 or 3 times a week, one company in our region introduces more people, adds more services, and most of all, and that's where I talk about continuous education, they add more layers of specialization. That is the biggest secret, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. I'll pick this up later. In some countries, these services start being in Argentina, Brazil, Poland, Peru. I'm just highlighting some of them in the region. It starts being a huge part of the wealth of those exports for the countries, 12%, 8%. There are some countries like Ireland or Israel or India that it is the main source of income. Costa Rica in our region, for example. But let me give you some more information, and then I'll talk about specialization. That I'd like to focus on that, because Talentum 360 is where it's focusing on, and I think that's where they can add value to you. This graph is very recent, by the IDB, where it shows penetration of internet in the homes according to the socio-economical profile. Forget about the countries, and let's not compare countries, because that's not nice to do. There are some countries that maybe are listening to us, and they're the first countries in the world here, maybe. You will find 2 curves. The orange line shows the number of homes where children in elementary school have internet access. And they have an internet access that allows them to study. We're gonna put that more concrete. In Argentina, it's 85%, Chile 70-something, Brazil, they're all above 70%. And that means that middle classes and upper middle classes, they have a complete access to the telecommunications industry. So if a child has it, for me this is a very interesting graphic, if the child has it to study, then the father has it to work, and they can work from home. And even the lower classes, the most vulnerable classes, they still have a high internet penetration rate. Not all of us have good access. There's still a lot to do, but we are talking about the fact that 1 of every 2 Brazilians, Argentinians, Uruguayans, Guatemaltecans, they have the possibility to work through internet connection. And that sets the trend of changes. Now let me go back a little bit to the specialization issue. Why continuous education is so important in this case. When, if I need to eat something tasty, maybe I can request something good from a good chef. Maybe it's a simple piece of food like a steak with fries. So I don't need a chef for that. I need someone to cook well. My mom was a great cook and she was never a chef. My mom knew how to make certain food and it was really tasty. A chef is someone that is prepared to look for new variations, to create new meals, new ingredients, new flavors, new textures to food and meals, and to go to a different experience than just eating or having a steak with fries, that it could be really tasty if it's well cooked, of course. The chef is going to look for that specialization. In the world of physicians, of medicine, it's very rare to have a generalist, a clinical physician. Most physicians and paramedics get specialized in certain fields. Traumatology, pediatricians, neurosciences, intensive care, intermediate care units, imaging. They specialize on different specializations, and the combinations of 2 or 3 specializations are necessary. Maybe you don't need just a neurologist, but you need a neurologist and surgeon at the same time. A cardiologist that is also specialized in other specializations. And that information is so much crossed that there are some physicians, some architects that have skills to do digital marketing, and you need cross skills to be successful. If I am a biotechnologist and what I'm doing is a new seed for a specific product so that it's resistant to droughts or resistant to certain plagues, maybe I need to work with a specialist in big data or data science in order to analyze the different combinations of the genomes that can give me that specific seed that I'm looking for. So my point is that more and more it's necessary to have other skills. In the translation world nowadays, it has a long way undergone. We have artificial intelligence, the elements that are generating with skills that are more advanced to translate. We all know that there are new challenges. I come from the IT world, and for many years I heard people say, programming is going to die in 5 years. I've been in the industry for 30 years, and the programmers are more and more needed every time. So those that forecast the death of something, they're usually wrong. And the same thing with the translation. There's a lot to be developed in terms of specializations, digital marketing related to translation, or design related to translation, or project management, or understanding certain disciplines, maybe medicine, maybe psychiatry, or anything that is needed to translate related to that skill, because you already have some knowledge. And that's where I think that a platform like Talentum 360 comes to cover that gap so that it can be trained. What we do know, and with this I like to close to start answering questions, what we do know is that it's not enough to have a certain educational period and that's it. Education must be continuous, and you can train yourself at 30, at 40, at 50, or 60. I'm over 60, and I have just finished a big data course in Mexico, in the Monterrey Tech, because I thought that that was the best one I could find. And before that, I did one on AI. And really, I see no reason for anybody not to continue their training. And they're not only related to the intellect or to a select group of people. In fact, they are linked now to other people that somehow may need that knowledge. Nowadays, in order to have a job, to have a decent job and with good projections, you need to have new digital skills. Sooner or later, that is going to be, that person otherwise is going to be replaced by a digital employee. Let's go to the questions, Amira. Perfect, Carlos. Before the questions, I'm going to summarize very briefly the experience that Carlos Pallotti has. He's a specialist in technology policies, more than 30 years in the IT industry and knowledge services. He developed businesses as an entrepreneur and promoting and implementing policies in the public policies in several countries in Latin America. Entrepreneur, founder, and leader of several chambers and company associations. He's been responsible for applied IT policies in the national administration in Argentina as a deputy secretary, and in several provinces and as a consultant in the knowledge services. And he has international awards as, for example, the personality of 2017 in Latin America. Now, without further ado, let's start with the questions. Let me also summarize Talentum 360. I wanted to introduce you this new executive business unit, the development center Talentum 360. Talentum 360 is a virtual center specialization developed by Clear Words Translation, focused on the global translation and localization market. Technology, artificial intelligence, advanced translation techniques, business, project management, games localization are just a few examples of the topics that are covered in the courses. The goal, the industry of localization and translation is changing, and Talentum 360 wants to be a part and is being a part of that transformation. Carlos, let's begin now with those questions that people are asking through the YouTube channels. People are watching it either in English or Spanish. And for example, we have a question. Maria, out of the 3 types of workers that have not grown in terms of demand, which one do you think will disappear or decrease substantially first? Without a doubt, the clearest example is the manufacturing employment. I think the car manufacturers, the textile manufacturers have fewer and fewer employees and more automation. That is clearly shown with several books that have been written. And let me give you an example. The textile industry, for instance, the Australian textile industry does no longer exist. Australia, many of us buy clothes from Australian brands. Australia decided as a strategy some years ago not to have any textile companies anymore, even though they produce wool in large amounts in the world. They discovered that it's not convenient for them to manufacture in their own territory, but to do more the juicy part of the business, the most profitable part of the business, which is the design, the brand, franchising, logistics, and production is then done in, or manufacturing is done in Indonesia or anywhere in the world. And that employment is no longer in Australia, but they have more and more people working in the textile industry without manufacturing anything. That is a great example of one of the areas that I think will lose jobs, and something special about that person, a person at a certain age. Governments need to do something, need to retrain them, because it's very difficult to go back to the labor market at a certain age. I'm going to give you another example. I passed a toll stand on a highway, and there was a huge sign saying that, sorry, they were open without paying as a protest because they were going to fire 1,500 employees. So I asked one of them, okay, why are you being fired? And they said that it was because, in fact, they're going to put automatic toll stands. And I thought, okay, this is the huge dilemma of the 21st century. They're going to get fired, and if they were not going to be fired that year, they're going to be fired the following year, because the toll stands will be automatic, and that's inevitable. So how do you train those 1,500 people on other skills so that maybe they themselves could automate the tall stands? So there are certain areas that are clearly weak in terms of the job creation. We have another question from Micaela Conti. This new digital world would imply a change in laws of each territory, taking into account that talents belong to one specific geography. Definitely so. That is something that now countries don't know how to manage, they don't know how to do, and I'm talking with a lot of knowledge, because I've been a consultant for many administrations. They don't know. So they levy taxes on companies, but taxes can maybe work in several countries, and they can levy taxes where it's more convenient to them to pay taxes. So the best thing that we can do in terms of policies is to retain talent. Let me give you an example. You may have, I'm going to give you an example of Argentina. It's very similar in Brazil as well. The difference between Booking and Despegar.com. Despegar in Brazil is called Decolar. Despegar has a development center in Brazil and in Argentina, and maybe in some other places too. The ticket can be sold for me from Booking or Despegar, from either one. I don't know where the bill is done. I pay with my credit card, and it may be billed in Sri Lanka or something like that. The only thing is that my ticket is issued, and that's it, and I pay. It's not the same for a country that Booking is there or that Despegar is there, because if Despegar has a development center, those are salaries, social charges and taxes that they pay, and the other doesn't pay taxes at all. Not only for selling, but also for people. And I know in the future, I'm not saying this for Despegar, I'm just talking in general. I know that if that company decides not to have that development center anymore, or services or translation center in that country, people are so well trained that they will have a new one. They will create their own companies because the knowledge, the talent is there.
Ahí pueden escucharme, así hago la... Bien, ahí sí.
All right.
Otra de las preguntas.
Another question is, the educational transformation implies more capacity to work in teams. Do you think people should be specialized in just one topic? Thank you, Micaela. I think that was your question. This question is perfect. At the beginning, I always relate everything to the Industrial Revolution, and I thought to put it in my talk. At that time, they didn't have teachers. So imagine a rural person in the US. Where were the teachers? The teachers were for a few white people who were the owners of the farms and the fields and the lands and the huge farmhouses, the ranches. But they didn't have teachers to teach black people or slaves. Then there was a huge problem to train teachers, to train trainers. So teachers learned from the few teachers that were there, and they trained the trainers. That was what happened. In fact, now what's happening, it's a new phenomenon, very novel, very new. It's a self-learning. Nowadays, there is a lot of team learning. One of the greatest experiences is that having people to get trained and to make them work as a team, and to having them, those that are more advanced, to answer questions to those who are not that advanced, and to help them understand a specific topic. And that surge for knowledge among all the people, the members of a team, decreases the load of having a good teacher or an expert, someone who can lead a classroom. Of course, if we want to have more and more specializations and more people prepared in all of these skills, we will need more people with the capacity to teach. And the truth is that the good things are, the good ones usually do not teach, they work. And so self-learning and team learning is a great experience that we see now. This started in Pôle 42 in a school in France. They started working on something called boot camps. And I know several projects in San Francisco. I saw that in New York. And I have also seen it in some countries in Latin America with a lot of experience where that self-learning or team learning with a mentor, the teacher stops having that role of being the greatest teacher and they start being a mentor, a facilitator, a tutor that guides and leads the search for knowledge, because knowledge nowadays is so huge that does not fit in just one teacher's head. If you want to explain the quantum physics or quantum theory, I need to have a good teacher, but there is so much to do research on that maybe I have one teacher that helps me do research or does research with me about the new trends, because for sure they will not have all the knowledge to do absolutely everything. Not long ago, before the pandemic, I was in MIT with John Williams, an English professor, and he showed me a slide of the 14th century. And that slide, there was a person in a public square. There was on a stand, on some sort of a stall, and under that there were people listening to him, sitting on the square. And he asked me, what is that? And I said, of course, that's a class. Well, for many years we were teaching like that. There was a teacher who was the greatest expert and the one with the knowledge. His patrimony was knowledge, and he transferred that to his disciples or her disciples. That's no longer the case. Now this is like network and collaboration training. And the best teacher in this case is that who helps to get collective knowledge and to introduce new ideas, to discover new knowledge areas. Amira, I think you're on mute.
Ahí estamos.
All right.
Una de las últimas preguntas.
One of the last questions to close. In your opinion, what is the future of virtual education in the next 5 years? Well, I think that what pandemic came to do is how useful virtual education is. On the other hand, the pandemic also brought about a lot of question marks in terms of the geography of certain education that was linked to a certain geography, like a university in some particular place. Why will I go to the University of Arizona when I can take that course anywhere in the world? The one that has the best courses and the ones that gives me the possibility to attend. So physical proximity or geographic proximity is no longer an issue. Virtual education, we've seen during the pandemic that it's absolutely necessary. And what happens is that it's complementary to the face-to-face education. When we talk about education, it's very big. We cannot generalize. It's not the same to have a child that is attending the first years of school that needs socializations, they need to make friends, they need to be able to share, to someone who is in university. There are different needs, but in general, we see that everybody can learn in a virtual way. And I am the director of a program in a university, and that program now has improved a lot in terms of the number of students who attend and sit for exams during the virtual world. Because in the past they had problems to attend classes because they were working. Now they were able to continue their program in a more fluent way because they do it from home. And we have almost doubled the number of people who attend the program. So I think that virtual learning is here to stay, and it's going to be a new way of teaching. But the virtual world is not the same as the actual world under Zoom. It's not, the way we teach is not the same in a virtual way and in a face-to-face classroom. Now we are in an old in an old phase still. In the virtual world, we need to look for other things, production, audiovisuals, a different language, because we may reach a lot more people, but in order to do so, we need to be prepared. It's not the same to teach a class in front of 20 students to have the possibility of having that same class to be attended by 1,000. Great, Carlos. We are having so many questions on the YouTube channel, so we're going to ask one final question. In this case, what is the growth trend of artificial intelligence in the world? There is no doubt that it's going to continue growing. And as Boris Johnson said, the thing is, what do I do with this? What do I do with Google knowing more about me than myself, than even my wife knows about me? So it is true. That is the problem. Definitely, artificial intelligence and the possibility of doing machine learning and what's happening is not a trend, it's a reality. For centuries, what we have done, first we wrote books, then we wrote computers, and we put everything in a record. The most important thing is to have a record of what we do. In a library full of books, Alexandria, for example, is one of the biggest developments of the world. What was there in Alexandria? It was all the books, the physical books, but what is it for? Everything that we have there, if I have a headache and I don't know why. And that's where artificial intelligence and the machine learning are going to help us, and to bring about one small chapter of one specific book says that, okay, my migraine, my headache is because of this or that, and out of the 5-7 million people in the world that had that problem, and all of them had the same problem. So what Boris Johnson just said, I understand him as a politician. He needs to solve that situation. The situation is going to improve us, to make us better as human beings. For me, artificial intelligence, machine learning, I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid because I think human beings have a much greater capacity than all that, but we can leverage that. A few years ago, they said, don't use the calculator in class because you will not be able to do math in your heads. Okay, nowadays, you say, what? That's stupid. I mean, why can't we use it? Because it's going to be faster, and why do I have to learn the multiplication tables? I'm not saying that that is correct, but I have many other things, much more interesting things to learn if I have that situation already solved. So I think artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, all of these things are going to grow. And in your world, where you have the humanistic concept with a technological concept, the translation world, I think that world is going to make it even more necessary. And it's going to be complementary to human beings. Carlos Pallotti, thank you so much for this wonderful webinar we had with you, where you were able to talk about the new skills for the digital transformation. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for being part of this webinar and for being with us in the talk today. Before finishing, I have two important things to tell you. First, we have free courses due to the launch of our website, www.talentum360.com, for you to register and to know a little bit more about the application and the platform. Besides, we invite you tomorrow at 3 o'clock, once again, here through the YouTube channel, because we'll have a talk with Fernando Sarmento from the O Futuro Institute in Brazil, talking about the creativity and the digital transformation in the industry. So don't miss it. And you can follow up us on the social media, LinkedIn at Talentum360.com. Let's meet tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much.